This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
We got Kiran there?
Yep, I'm here.
Kiran Sidhu, Halo Labs, Halo at Halo Labs Inc. on Twitter and HaloCanada.com. How are things going, man?
Good. How are things in Toronto? Have they started to cool off?
Actually, it's been quite a nice sort of weekend and week, actually, like sort of in the, I guess, 19s. It gets cool at night, but it's very nice.
All right.
I don't know where else to go with that. It's very nice. I'll tell you where else I can go now. I saw your company, always Forward Progress over at Halo Labs, had another PR or news release today. You're getting in the tech game.
Yeah, we're getting in the tech game, and keep in mind that Andreas, myself, two of the co-founders, we have a deep history in tech. I mean, I have a bachelor's in AB actually in computer science from Brown University in the day, but I've been in tech most of my life when I haven't been in cannabis. Most recently, Andreas and I worked together at PartyPoker or PartyPoker.com. And I was one of the sort of founding members there, and we built that company up to a 20 billion pound market cap, and was number one poker site in the world. And then I had an e-money business that was one of the largest in Europe. So we have a deep background in tech. And what's been happening is there's a lot of competition, especially in Oregon, Nevada, and in California. And so our salespeople are saying, look, give us something other than ice or Dosh or keychains or something that would differentiate us when we go into dispensaries to open new dispensaries. We said, well, look, you got dab tabs, you got some great new products. They said, well, give us something special. And so what we did is we looked and we saw this software package, and we thought it was totally cool. That is not like a POS package or anything to do like that, but helps some of the larger dispensaries sort of where people want to come to them. There's some dispensaries that are really big we deal with, like there's one out in Ontarioville that can have 3 to 4 hour waits. So before someone, and that's in Oregon, before someone starts to drive, they have an app on their phone, which also pushes them information about the dispensary specials and potentially allows them to order, but they can put their name in the queue, right? So they can say, look, and so they actually have a time where they can go there and they don't have to sit and wait for 2 hours.
Brilliant. But I'm still blown away that you started PartyPoker.
Yeah, I didn't really start. I mean, Ruth and Anurag started it.
Sure.
I came in really early when I was up in Marin. And then it was like the biggest, I would say that marijuana is just more of a whirlwind than poker was. But poker, we started in Marin. And, obviously we weren't licensed here. And we actually ended up in Gibraltar, right, off of Spain. They gave us a license. And we built a business, from, I remember here, maybe a couple $100,000 a month drop to the point where it was over $100 million a month coming in. And the drop means deposits we took in. So I've seen rapidly growing businesses before. But, yeah, that was – and Andreas was there with us, and he actually ran all the player databases. And actually our partner up in Mendocino, Michael Seabor, ran all the big whales, as they called them at the time. He ran all the big players who came to play at PartyPoker, and that was a big sort of attraction of PartyPoker was all the professionals that played on it because everyone always wanted to play against the big pros.
Access, for sure.
I wouldn't advise doing myself. But something I wouldn't advise doing myself. I mean, my God, can you imagine playing against a professional poker? Well, I want to play against them to see how good I am. I got tagged for a couple $1,000 for the privilege of doing it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, okay, kiss your money goodbye. What's the point of that? Is there any with the sort of app deal and stuff? What do you take from that background to this back? Like, are there any sort of synergistic lessons here?
Oh, absolutely. So, there's a great lesson about this and about apps and marijuana, and the best one I think is Eaze, which is EAZE, which is an app in California, and I think through that app, their depots, I've heard numbers from 10 to 15 million a month of sales generated. So you order your cannabis on ease. They lay the order off electronically to a depot, and the driver delivers you your product, right? And I think that model is going to become more and more prevalent. But, there are people having an app there that sort of isn't a POS, that sort of helps people like manage when they come, almost get an appointment when they come, to be able to push specials to them, say, hey, do you want it? Do you want it waiting when you come? And to actually maybe even have an interactive kiosk in there, at some point, so if people just walk in, they can interact with the kiosk in terms of getting an appointment in some of these bigger dispensaries, right? In Canada, I hear you don't have so much of that issue, but some of the larger dispensaries, like Fort Twentyville in Ontario, they've actually built benches outside and food trucks to accommodate people during peak times. And I've seen that also in Vegas. I remember going to the Vegas Show Grow out in Summerlin that Dave and the guys built out there. And the wait out there was an hour and a half, like on a Friday afternoon. So, there's definitely a lot of demand in these dispensaries. And if you can help them manage the flow of customers, our guys thought it was a brilliant idea. And so that's what we brainstormed about, and that's what we ended up doing.
And on the business side of things, Kiran, and if investors are wondering, how does that transaction work? Well,
it's interesting. So it's really funny. Investors seem to know this word dilution, but I've never heard of an investor ask about accretion, right? So the opposite of black is white, and the opposite of dilution is accretion. And so they're like, wow, you're issuing shares. It's dilutive. And that is the wrong way to think about it. I also have an MBA, God forbid, from the Wharton School of Business and Finance. And so this is something that I know really well. And so right now, because the market has been depressed, which, obviously everyone says, buy low, sell high, there's so many assets out there for the picking that are, that have also taken a hit. So our concept here is when we do anything, we model it extensively. We put a big memo together. We go to our board. We put valuation metrics together. And we believe that this will be accretive to us within 9 to 12 months. And there's negligible investment in this product. So we're really pumped about it. And it's part of sort of a overall move. And obviously, I can't disclose non-public information, but it'll become really sort of prevalent to investors what we're thinking and what we're doing as we start stringing together a series of different sort of pathways, and it'll all come together and say, aha, that was the first step in that pathway, right? So, for instance, we've already made an announcement on our CBD pathway with extraction in Oregon where we toll for farmers. And, we're looking down that pathway to see how do we play in that pathway in a differentiated way. Now we have dispensary track, and we're going to look down this pathway and say, how do we tie this into some of the other stuff we know? Because, as you know, I was the CEO of, Everyone Does It, right, was the largest, B2C marijuana website, actually the second largest behind Grass City in Europe. One of the largest in the U.S., which I ended up selling to Namaste in the day for I think we sold it for like 15 cents when the stock was 15 cents, and that is an interesting model too, whereby and I know Green Lane and other guys have been thinking this through, but when you go into a dispensary, you have the ability to get stuff that the dispensary may not have, and the dispensary gets a clip of it, right? That they just can't carry because of their size. And so there are many interesting sort of e-commerce plays outside of the traditional ones that you can help dispensaries with. And then when you help them with it, what that does is it gives your products more visibility and ties you more closely to them. So you get a more closer alignment.
And in terms of return on investment and stuff, is there a forecast for that?
Well, we don't officially put out forecasts, but one thing I'll assure everybody, and everybody of, is that you can't make an investment. Now, we're not a CSE company, right? We're not on the entrepreneurial exchange. We're on the NEO. The NEO is not even TSX. The NEO standards are like the TSE. So we can't do anything without a whole bunch of thought process that we have to actually apply to the exchange for approval. Right? It's not an automatic approval when we do a deal. And so we have to think through all of these things, as a company before we do any deal. And, we have a great team. You've spoken to Katie, and under her Scott, who did M&A over at the Bank of California for many years. And so we think through all these deals. But now is the time, honestly, where things are depressed to find great deals. And it doesn't hurt with this deal that we get another $3 million, and hopefully maybe some other people will tag along, of capital under our belt at a premium to market, on a private placement.
Kiran,
keep going.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Todd.
No, you go.
No, I was just thinking to myself, one thing that's really critical, I think, in this day and age is having a strong balance sheet.
Yep. And,
we just keep working towards doing that, right? So we make sure we don't blow our brains out with a lot of debt, like people blow their brains out with credit cards. And we get equity under us, and we use debt prudently as we need it.
Well, listen, and not that I'm the most schooled in this topic at all, but I've been following the cannabis space pretty closely, and that's what a lot of the cannabis companies did, quite frankly. Just to simplify it for people, is they did big raises. They had a lot of, they had massive cash flow. Of course, they were trying to promote their business, but they were really burning through so much of their money too quickly, and now we're starting to see which ones will survive. And that's one of the things I know we've talked about, not here on the program, but in other places, is the amount of money that people have in the bank to last per quarter. And it seems it is dire for some companies, isn't it?
It is, but that's also an opportunity, right? And the people who don't realize, with us, we've gone through substantial cost cutting, very aggressive cost cutting. Out of the four top executives in the company, 3 of us take all stock, right? Yep. And so we put our money where our mouth is. We reduce costs very aggressively, and everyone has in the business, right? But we haven't, mortgaged our future. And some other companies have done that. And that's a big bet. That's what I call a highly levered bet. But, the other thing that people have to understand is that the overall economics of the business are upward, meaning that more people are using cannabis. It's replacing, the beer companies are sort of, themselves sort of getting into it, obviously, and looking at what they can do and seeing some of their market share dissipate. And, it's just it's a really dynamic time. Obviously the market's had a reset financially. You got vape crisis, talk everywhere and bans going up. Thank God we're such a big concentrate company, and we always use natural products. But, through any crisis is opportunity, and it's a question of, seizing the day, carpe diem for the opportunities. And I think pivoting into some software services, pivoting a little bit into CBD, but never forgetting our core of concentrates, sort of helps us to diversify our base and to offer more services to our dispensary clients.
When you're this close to the action, meaning, running a company, Halo Labs, and stock price aside, the day to day, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, do stock prices, it's funny because people invest, blah, 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 but you have a mission here. I mean, so the mission is still, you drive forward on that goal. So do you just sort of let it go? Kind of not, is when you're running a company, can you put aside the public's, stock side of things?
Well, the point, the thing, Louisa Magella, who's going to be our chairman soon here as we, close Buffalo. I mean, that's really close to getting signed, and it'll be closed pretty quickly. We just need approvals from the Lesotho Lesotho National Bank, and we have a good sponsor in Nedbank, so that's going to happen pretty quickly, hopefully. What she said to me is, Kiran, and, remember, she was an original investor in Sun International. She sat on the board of South African Airways, Sasol, big companies. And she herself runs her own woman empowerment fund. I think it's worth about $250 million.
Amazing.
U.S. And what she says to me, she says, Kiran, don't look at the stock price. Don't look at that. Focus on building a good business and a solid business, right? And people will see soon when we close that deal how she's going to put her money where her mouth is, right? Like all of us have done in the company. And she says, don't focus on that. Go build a good business. Go build a solid business. Go win business. And the stock price will take care of itself. She said she's given that advice to Saul Kurtzner. She's given that advice to the founders of Sasol, which was a very large mining company, or still is. And it is hard sometimes to do that, especially when shareholders email me and I respond to them. And a lot of the times I have to tell them, look, I can't comment on that.
Yep.
I think it's a good time to buy your stock. I can't tell you when to buy my stock, right? But if you say to me, why aren't you buying the stock? I'll say, look, I'm in a closed period. But when I'm not in the closed period, I always pick up some shares, So it's just, it's a hard thing to navigate, honestly. But, you got to keep your blinders on. You got to build the business. But at the same time, you got to be out there, doing what we're doing here, talking to people and letting people know, what's up at the same time.
Kiran, in your sort of days, years, I'm not trying to age you here, of being in business and so many different business and stuff, can you think, is there a similar industry that's had these kind of cannabis patterns of a lot of euphoria out of the gate, pretty strong run, a little bit of some question marks on some certain companies, a little bit of efficacy issues for others, and compliance issues, quite frankly. I won't name names, but some companies that maybe helped unfortunately bring the stuff down because of their reputations. Yours, of course, not being one of them. That you can think of in terms of industries like this, like in different sectors.
Well, you got to remember the whole .com boom and bust and then recovery, right? So remember, you had diapers.com, you had, grocery.com, and, remember before there was Google, there was Alta Vista and Netscape. I mean, that was an interesting period there. But I look at this more like 2007. When Goldman Sachs, I just couldn't believe it. I just saw Cannabis trading below 30.
Yep.
And I looked at that, and that's sort of like to me, when Goldman Sachs was trading at $5 before Warren Buffett came in with that strategic preferred, and I think it was 2007, 2008. Remember, Citibank was trading at like 90 cents.
It's crazy. I spoke to a very wealthy individual who told me when it was trading under $1, he put in a lot of money, and it made him a lot wealthier. That's really funny. You bring up Citibank.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there've always been periods like this, and it takes a lot of conviction, in these sorts of periods to sort of buy and hold. And I remember in 2007 personally, I sort of panicked, and I sold off like everyone else. So I took a pretty big hit. During the .com bubble, I had a company called Nano Universe PLC that was a AIM-listed, AIM-listed company. I remember that, and we held on to our NAV, and inevitably we actually returned, almost all the money substantially to our shareholders, plus some return that we invested in the .com era. Because what was interesting is we came in towards the tail end, and everything started to collapse. So we said, let's do some more higher up balance sheet investments. Let's be a little bit more conservative in the day. And it ended up panning out. It wasn't a .com return, but at least, we didn't lose our shirts in that one.
Kiran Sidhu, the CEO. Oh, sorry. Your pauses make me want to just add to the conversation, Kiran. But they're calculated. No, I was just going to bring it back. I'm resetting in radio. We reset the dinner tables. That's our lingo in terms of reminding people who are talking all the time. And Kiran Sidhu from the CEO of Halo Labs. You sorry to interrupt that thought, but you did mention briefly the vape crisis, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about it. Sort of where we're at with that now. What what are states doing? Are there more statewide bans? And what are your overall thoughts for someone who has a product like dab tabs?
So I just got a note right here from our lobbyist in Oregon, and Andreas wrote to her and said, "Hi. Well, the fact that the Mayo Clinic believed pesticides and vitamin E are the primary issues of use, why would they, ban botanical versus cannabis terpenes?" And she said, "I forward that on to the governor's office, and I think we're getting close to allowing botanical terpenes, which is a big issue now in Oregon, versus cannabis terpenes, because cannabis terpenes are much more expensive than botanical terpenes, to be used, and that's the big drama in Oregon. I'm not seeing big drama on a government or public health basis, any more news coming out in California. And I'm not seeing a lot in Nevada, but what I'm hearing now is that people are backing off vaping and looking to alternatives. And obviously dabbing and concentrates, which even though they're, a little bit more awkward to use, putting the dab tabs aside, which totally solved that problem. It seems that there seems to be a little bit more interest in the live resin, in the cured live resin, which is shatter, and some of those derivative concentrates is what we're hearing. Also, what a lot of us are doing now is taking the concentrates, obviously putting them in, proprietary delivery systems like the dab tabs, but also putting them now in cartridges. So, ceramic cartridges and blending live resin into the cartridges, blending terp sauce into the cartridges, and those are starting to get traction. And as a user, I prefer those myself because they're higher end products.
Kiran, when you talk about this, all the products and sort of, all the terms in the cannabis space, do you ever fear that sometimes, for the average, consumer, someone who maybe isn't, invested personally or invested even in stock, just kind of wants to try, oh, it's legal in my state, oh, it's legal in my country, let me try this out. Do you think that we've educated people enough?
It's, you got great sites like Weed Maps and Leafly that do it, but it is really, the bud tender is really a key person there, right?
Yeah.
And to educate people. And, but, it's, you're right. I'm so deep into it, and I'm so much in the stores, and I'm so much in the plants, and, I'm continuously into it, is that sort of my point of view is very different from, let's say, someone walking in on a Friday afternoon after work saying, I thought I'd go pick up a six-pack, but instead I'll come here. What do you got for me? And that's an interesting question. I've never thought about that. What would I tell that person? I go, well, do you want something to put in your drink? Here's a tincture. You like candy? Here's your pizza. There's so many different choices now.
And simplified, and that's one of the things I always, hope that within this industry we can simplify it. And someone once gave me an analogy of how wine is often talked about. People can understand little things about the regions and the temperature and the different flavors and stuff. And to be honest, you explain it so well. But I'm just being completely candid here with you. It's sometimes it's overwhelming at times, and it's I love being a sponge of information. I love for our listeners to be a sponge of information, and I just want to make sure everyone can keep up. I just want to broach that is basically what I'm saying.
Oh God, I can barely keep up. My favorite thing is really
you're being humble.
My favorite thing is consistently is live resin, which almost looks like caviar if it's done properly. And when you just open that up and smell it, it's just the bouquet is just tremendous. Now what people are doing is they're actually making what's known as cured live resin, and they're putting them in pressure cookers with seeds, and they're seeding diamonds, right? So diamonds are THCA crystals that form after you seed the live resin, and then what we call the terp layer pops up on top, right? And so now it's really a business that's sort of in its early days. So people keep pushing envelopes, and what I loved 6 months ago, which was just beautiful live resin, is now turned into cured live resin, which is some people call shatter, but other people call terp sauce mixed with diamonds, and it just goes on. And every time I go to one of the factories, the extractors and our product development people are always showing me new products. A new product is shatter, which is really popular in Oregon. We're developing a clear shatter. So it's not dark, and it's beautiful, and it's clear, and it takes out all the the chlorophyll, that a plant would have. It just keeps, the technology, at least in the U.S., just keeps going forward, and the new products that we get just keep proliferating, It's pretty cool, actually.
Definitely very cool, and that's why I like talking to you, because it's an education, and that's and me just trying to again simplify it a little bit. My last question for you, Kiran Sidhu from Halo Labs, with this entire space, isn't there still so much of the plant that is being R&D'd that might have other than the THC and CBD that we might discover as well? And aren't there other properties of the whole cannabis plant that is still soon to come out?
Yeah, definitely. You know where I would put my bet right now is CBN, right?
Never even heard of it.
CBN is people. Yeah, so CBN is another one. There's CBG, CBN. There are many different cannabinoids. But CBN, everyone says, is a great way to promote sleep. And Chad Canner says, you can make CBG and CBN by, cooking. This is just sort of a analogy, and I don't know if it's true, but he says, listen, one thing that allows me to sleep is if I take like a teaspoon of distillate, which you put in a vape cart, and I heat it up really hot, so it takes the THC and converts it into CBN and CBG, so it's less psychoactive. And then I take a sip of that, I'd like a spoon, and I sleep like a baby all night, right? But there's a lot of talk, and that's like, I'd say, a very crude way of doing it, but there are these things called, chromatography. And through chromatography, you can actually isolate CBN, but there are a lot of people now starting to isolate CBN. And I think, probably within a year, it won't maybe as prevalent as, CBD.
See, and these are the things that I'm really excited by, learning more. And there's so much to be taught here within the cannabis space, and that's exactly why, Kiran, that we can talk for 40 straight minutes or 35 minutes, and it goes that quickly. I appreciate the candidness from everything from the stock to the space, the sector, and the plan itself. From Kiran Sidhu, CEO of Halo Labs, halocanna.com, and obviously, full disclosure, I also work with the company, invest in the company, have compensation in the company, but I love learning about it, and that's exactly what we're doing. Kiran, thank you so much for your time today, my man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Cheers. Kiran Sidhu, everyone.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.